My name is Nathan Hoskins, and this is the video for my Tableau project. The requirements for this assignment were to take the dataset provided from Excel and create visualizations from the data in Tableau and provide analysis of the data. The datasets provided included over 700,000 sales of different kinds of wine to various stores all across New England, as well as some information on the customers that the wine was sold to. Since there was so much information, I based my visualizations on the classes of wine instead of the thousands of wine descriptions, so I could get a more general overview of the data. What I wanted to know was whether or not the average sale price of the wine actually affected how many bottles of wine was sold, and if it was affected, then how directly was the revenue in dollars affected. The first visualization I created was a bar graph to see which classes of wine sold the best. It's easy to see that the American Varietal Red and the American Varietal White sold much more than any other class of wine. These two classes alone sold more than half of all the wines sold in the entire data set. It's easy to see this comparison in the pie graph. It isn't very surprising to see that American wines sell well in America, but I did want to see if there was another factor that influenced how many bottles were sold. My main theory was that the average sale price of the bottles of wine was a major factor in how many bottles were actually sold. The next visualization I created had similar data to the first bar chart, with the wines still being sorted by class and showing how many bottles were sold, seen on the top. However, this time, the numbers were compared to the average sales price per bottle of wine on the bottom, with the data still sorted in descending order by number of bottles sold. You can see that the majority of the classes of the wines sell for about $6 to $10, or $7 to $10, but there are a few outliers. For example, the $42 per bottle champagne and the $24 per bottle French Bordeaux, respectively. If price really was a major factor, or the major factor, in how many bottles of wine were sold, then these two classes of wine would be near the bottom in terms of sales. However, while they pale in comparison to the American varietals, they're still relatively high on the chronologically on the list. Finally, I wanted to see how much the revenue in dollars was actually affected by the sales price of the different classes of wine. This chart is similar to the last chart, but instead of being sorted by the quantity of bottles sold, this one is sorted by the revenue in dollars of each class of wine sold. Here, you can see that even though the champagne was around 15th in ranking in quantity of bottles sold, it is actually 5th in the revenue of bottles sold. And the French Bordeaux is around, I don't know, 10th. So as you can see from all these graphs and visualizations from the data, that while some cheaper wines, such as the American Varietal Red and American Varietal White, did sell better than some more expensive wines, like the Champagne or the French Bordeaux, the actual sales price of the wine was not the most important factor in how many bottles were sold. It could just be that the American Varietal Red and the American Varietal White classes of wine are just more popular in the areas they were sold, which would also explain why the Champagne sold so many bottles. Champagne seems to be a more popular, more high quality brand of wine, which would explain why people would be able to pay more uh, for this kind of wine.